Keep watching the politics.
Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Financial Focus University. My name is Professor Anthony RIVIECCIO. I am the owner of Financial Advisors Group, a 25-year-old investment management firm. I am currently the CEO of RIVIECCIO Financial Advisors, a financial advisory firm in the virtual space. And when I have enough time, I try to teach. I'm an adjunct professor at both Herbert H. Lehman College and Monroe College in personal finance here in the lovely city of New York. On today's show at Financial Focus University, our 45-minute show, I believe we have a great show for you today. We're going to cover 3 segments that I think are very important in your financial life, especially if you live within the state of New York boundary. Our first segment, of course, will be our traditional Bidenomics segment. We had a crazy week, ladies and gentlemen, as I'm sure you might remember. So we're going to go over that week in greater detail instead of that one day where you heard the world was coming to an end. Well, it went down, but we'll talk about the whole week. Our second segment is a personal finance segment, and we're going to include for the month of May credit and debt as part of our how-to segment, so we can help you to concentrate more in that area of your financial portfolio. Our segment will be how to clean up your credit report. And then our third and final segment, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be our traditional budget and politics segment. As you know, every couple of weeks here in the state of New York, we're now in the middle of state elections. Okay, that's a complicated process within itself, ladies and gentlemen. But we have a young man that is running for office. His name is George DIAZ. He is running for the 81st Assembly District here in the Bronx. That is the predominant Riverdale part of the district, with certain parts being in Norwood. And we're going to get his opinion on a variety of different things, anywhere from finding out a little bit more who George is to his feelings on state budgets, taxes, and so on. So let's get started with our first segment, our Bidenomics segment. Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about Bidenomics and the economic week ahead, or I should say that just passed, we really had a real crazy week, right? Let's talk about some of the things that happened this week, right? Well, the first thing that happened this week was we got what we'll call first quarter productivity numbers. Now, you heard me mention maybe in the show last week when I went over gross domestic product, you might have heard me say that consumer spending was fine and imports were fine, right? Those areas of our economy were doing well. What weren't doing well was business spending and government spending. So now we got the first quarter productivity reports that basically now confirm that. First quarter productivity went down 7%. Not a good number for our U.S. economy. The second thing that happened this week, ladies and gentlemen, was we had spike up in interest rates. And that could be a good or bad thing depending on how our economy is going. Our Federal Reserve Board has clearly announced that interest rates were going up. Some thought they were going up 25 basis points. Most people thought they were going up 50 basis points. We even had some economists thought they might go up 75 basis points. Well, this week they went up 50 basis points, and there was both an equal amount of happiness as well as concern. Ladies and gentlemen, the third thing that happened this week was labor costs. Now, labor costs are very, very important, right? Let's talk about the end product or the end service that one gets, right? Well, a significant amount of that product or service comes from labor costs, right? And that indirectly affects the rate of inflation. So labor costs went up 11%. So if you want to know one reason of a million reasons why inflation is up, it's because labor costs have gone up, right? You can't blame anyone for wanting more money, especially in these type of economic times. But if companies have to pay labor costs 11%, where do you think that 11% is going to wind up trickling? It's not going to go back to the producer. It's going to go to the consumer. So again, both a good and bad sign. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we had the employment report for the week that came out today, being Friday. Not a bad number. You know, we generally look at a minimum number of 200,000 jobs employed per week. As economists, that's our basic middle ground number. Well, the numbers this week came in at 240,000 as opposed to 200,000. So again, showing a slight increase in our economic growth. But as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, with the things that happened this week in our economy, right? There were some things that were good, some things that were bad. So how did our stock market and our bond market do after digesting all of this data? When we go to the next slide, you're going to see how we did for the week. You'll see that the S&P 500 went down 0.6% for the week. You will see the Dow Jones Industrial Average went down 0.8% for the week. You will see the Nasdaq, which is your predominant stocks in technology, they went down negative 1.5% for the week. So the markets in general actually had a very bad week. How about bonds? How did bonds do? Well, the 2-year Treasury bond actually went up for the week 1%. Remember I said short-term rates went up 50 basis points, right? So the 2-year bond went up 1%. It is now at 2.7%. Well, how about the 10-year bond, right? Well, again, remember the Federal Reserve said interest rates are going up. So the 10-year bond actually went up in value 7%. And now that rate for 10 years is at 3.1%, right? These numbers are looking a little bit better than when we were talking about it at the beginning of the year, and these numbers were like at 1%, right? 0.5%. Well, as you can see, interest rates are now starting to go up very dramatically. So how did the stock market do for the week, right? After all that data? Well, as you can see on the chart, the stock market for the week did a negative 1.4%. Ladies and gentlemen, for 6 weeks in a row, you've been hearing me say negative, 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 because for 6 weeks in a row, the markets have been producing negative results. Our 2022 return from the beginning of the year to now, which is a total of 18 weeks, the market's been down 11.1%. Let me repeat that, 11.1%. Economics 101 that anybody that took as a freshman in college must have learned, and it still applies, that when you have the stock market go down 10% in a period of 1 year, we call that the forewarnings of a recession. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me repeat that last number. The market from January 1 to today, 18 weeks, that's not a year, has gone down 11.1%. Does that mean it can't go back up? Of course it can. Does it also mean it can go down further? That's what it means. If you're getting ready to call your financial advisor, I strongly recommend you do that. So let's go to our last index, what I like to call the Bob Press Index. As some of our audience knows, 10 weeks ago, Bob Press, who was not a client, just a dear friend, gave me a call. He was scared with the market. The markets were going haywire. He says, Anthony, what do you think I should do? And, I don't like to give specific advice to people that are not clients because I have a fiduciary duty. So I kept it very general with him, but general enough to share some feelings with him about, my worries with part of the market. He says, I'm all in, Anthony. I'm all in for the long term. I'm going all in. Well, that was 10 weeks ago. Well, from today, Bob Press is down negative 5.3%. So, ladies and gentlemen, all I can say is for a Bidenomics note, as I've been saying for the last several weeks, please call your financial advisor. Please get some updates on the economy. Please get some thoughts from an investment advisor that, of course, has more expertise than either the plumber, your next door neighbor, Aunt Tilly, or, of course, a 31-year-old professional like me with a whole bunch of gray hair. Ladies and gentlemen, before we close this segment, I want to bring you to the final slide. And if we could show that chart is a very important chart, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you what that chart is in a nutshell. What you're looking at is a 2-year chart, the last 2 years of the economy. And what you're seeing is that from the beginning of that 2-year chart, all the way for the first 20 months of those 2 years, as you can see, right at that dip, that's when COVID hit us. March of 2020. That's when COVID hit us. And as you can see, believe it or not, from the time COVID hit us in 2020 all the way until the end of 2021, our stock market went up. Please don't ask me why, because if I had the answers, I'd be at the racetrack. All I can tell you is it went up to 30%. I got a billion phone calls like every other advisor. Why? We don't know why. Of course, we have our own speculations, right? But now January 1, 2022 comes, and what happened? What happened to that 25% that I made in the course of those 18 months? When you were getting your 401k plans or your quarterly statements, you were opening it up, and you kept hearing all these bad things about Donald Trump. You kept hearing all these bad things about COVID. You kept hearing all these bad things about our economy. But your 401k kept going up, right? How did that happen? Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see by the chart, it's all gone, right? From January 1 to today, we are now in even mode. That money you made in 18 months is now gone in 4. So if this chart doesn't get you to call your financial advisor, quite frankly, I don't know what will. But if you need any help, feel free to give me a call, 347-575-5045. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment.
World Inkers Monthly Magazine is a fine source for your literary interests. It's an all-source magazine with poetry, prose, and essays and articles, as well as interviews. It's all full-color art and photography from a variety of voices and artists. You will find this magazine entertaining. This is an all-purpose readership, and we are looking for new voices. This sleek, full-color edition of World Inkers Monthly Magazine will be something pleasant for your eyes as well as for your mind. And we're looking for authors for one book promotion in the magazine. If you're a business, we want to promote your business. You may submit your book reviews, your academic or non-academic articles on the humanities and the arts, as well as your literary writing and creative output to publication.worldinkers@gmail.com. World Inkers Monthly Magazine does not spare any ink. Keep inking for World Inkers Monthly Magazine.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. You mean that last segment didn't get you to run out the door and call your financial advisor? Well, again, please do that. And again, more importantly, welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to go into our second segment, what we call personal finance, what we call our how-to segment. And I just want to preface before we go into it that we're going to spend the next couple of weeks in this segment talking about credit and debt. You know, when we talk about economics, when we talk about personal finance, we're always talking about savings and investing and retirement, and all those things are, of course, very important, right? But what's just as important is your debt, right? And what did I say in the last segment? Interest rates are going up, right? Well, yeah, they're going up on your savings, but they're also going up on your debt. So if we can get to the first slide, let's talk about your credit report. Let's talk about what's going on with your credit report and how do we clean up your credit report. Ladies and gentlemen, I want everyone to go to annualcreditreport.com. Annualcreditreport.com. Every citizen in the United States is allowed to get one free credit report per year. And when you get that credit report, you're going to see a lot of things on there, right? And what you're going to basically see, ladies and gentlemen, are three types of areas. And please feel free to grab a pen. I'm going to try to go over some of these things in detail, but at the same token, show you how to make your credit report better. So the first thing you're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, and I write these down as rules, for lack of a better word, is whatever is true is true, is true, is true. You owe somebody money and it's true? Well, it's true. There's no magic wand to get rid of it. There's no $9.99 book to get rid of it. There's no service on the 3 a.m. commercials you see on TV to get rid of it. If it's true, it's true. And what's the best thing to do? You might as well pay it off and get it off your credit report, right? But now keep in mind, whatever is true, but on the other side of the coin, whatever is false is false is false. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to share something with you that a lot of people are not aware of. And it could be happening to you right now on your credit report. A lot of people have, in the United States, have similar names, similar last names, right? For example, our guest coming up later, Mr. George Diaz, right? Rivera, right? Another common name. Jones, another common name. And believe it or not, there are also common addresses, right? And there are also, believe it or not, common social security numbers. Not the same social security number, but very common social security numbers. And what happens when the agency makes a mistake and accidentally, because of course they wouldn't do it on purpose, right? Accidentally takes someone's credit information and puts it on your report? Well, that depends. If that credit information is from, say, Elon Musk, right? Then it actually might make your credit report higher. But I bet $1 to a donut that information is going to probably be bad. And based on that information, what it's going to do is put your credit score down on information that has nothing to do with you. And that could be happening right now, ladies and gentlemen, because until you check your credit report, you don't know any of the possibility of the false things that could be on your credit report. We'll talk about how to eliminate that in a moment. So again, whatever is true is true. Whatever is false is false. Let's talk about the third and final area, which I believe is the most dangerous area. What I call whatever is outdated has to be updated. Let me, ladies and gentlemen, give you the most simple example of what that phrase means. I call it holiday spending, right? So I see this all the time. Come November, you have the holidays. Halloween just hit. You know Thanksgiving's coming. You know Christmas is right around the corner, right? So, of course, what are you going to do? You're going to go shopping, right? So you're going to take your card in November and you're going to start doing all this shopping. And now here comes December, right? December comes. You want to keep your money tight. You've already spent all your money for November. Guess what? Here comes the credit card bill, right, for December. You say, okay, you know what? I want to keep my cash tight because I just spent a lot of money. The holidays are here. I'm going to pay this next month. So now here comes January. And guess what? You were a good person. You paid not one time, but you paid twice. You took that one check, instead of paying $50, you paid $100, and you mailed it to Visa, MasterCard, and you congratulated yourself, right? And you were very happy, and you said, I'm caught up. No, you're not. Because what has just happened is that payment was late. And the credit agency is going to make sure it's recorded as late. Why are they going to do that? Because the vendor that you actually owe it to is going to make sure that it gets put down on your credit report. And that information, ladies and gentlemen, is what I call outdated information. Because as the time goes on, you, as you know, you have paid that debt, right? So we should get those things extinguished. We should get those things eliminated. Again, what I call outdated information has to be updated. So again, ladies and gentlemen, we know we can't do anything about number one, right? Whatever is true is true is true is true. Number two and number three, we can do things about. Anything that's got to do with false information, we can get rid of it. Anything that has to do with outdated information, we can update the information, right? Either eliminate or update it. So how do we solve the problems that might fall into areas number 2 and areas number 3? Well, ladies and gentlemen, there was an act created in 2001 called the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Okay, and I'm getting a little closer to the screen because, quite frankly, I don't have that screen in front of me and I'm trying to read it. But all you have to do, ladies and gentlemen, is grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, because you can do this in writing, and you can say, dear whoever the creditor is you're writing to. If it's TransUnion, if it's Equifax, whoever is the custodian of the report that you got from annualcreditreport.com, whoever that is, that's who you're addressing this to. And you're just saying very simply, due to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, I would like to point out the items that I believe are both erroneous and outdated. According to the law, I hope these items can be corrected within the next 30 days. Because, ladies and gentlemen, as part of that law, once you write down what those items are that you are disputing, that second and third area, and you write that to the agency, by law, the agency has 30 days to correct your report. So that's just your little way of reminding them. If you lie, of course, they're going to do their own preliminary investigation, right? But using that same example, if you write paid the bill in January of 2022, right? Using that example we used earlier, that eliminates the late fee. It's those type of items in areas 2 and areas 3 that lower your credit score. Of course, we want to make our credit score higher, right? Each agency has its own credit score. That's a subject for another time. What I want you to be aware of is no matter which agency we deal with, they all work the same way, right? So you want to get rid of what I'm going to call the dead weight that's on that report of yours, that some of it shouldn't even be there in the first place. Anybody need any help? Feel free to give me a call. 347-575-5045. We'll be back in a moment.
Are you curious about financial literacy? then take a look at Professor Anthony Rivièccio's new program on Parrot TV. It's called Financial Focus University. This is an excellent program to learn about questions related to your own finances post-COVID, it's how you can manage your money, how you can work with your tax situation, and this is an excellent and informative discussion of financial literacy. With Professor Anthony Rivièccio, your financial problems will be solved at Parrot TV with Financial Focus University.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're going to enjoy our final segment before we close our show tonight. Our final segment is called Budget and Politics. Now, I guess let me start off by saying that, of course, I'm not a politician. So what we want to learn is what these elected officials or candidates want to do, not just with policy, but also with our money, right? That's one of the predominant reasons for having these segments, right? They're in charge of our money, whether it comes to increasing or decreasing the taxes, or increasing or decreasing the budget. So since this is a money-based show, right, that's what we're most concerned about. So we have a wonderful guest with us tonight by the name of Mr. George DIAZ. George, are you with us? Happy New Year.
Good afternoon, Anthony. Yes, I'm with you.
George, thank you for joining us tonight. How you feeling?
I'm doing pretty well, and I think the sound of the pouring rain behind me, I think, is a little comforting.
That is true. Anyone not from the New York area, it's been a rainy, not as cold as they thought it was going to be, but still a rainy, damp type of day.
Yes.
George, let's start with talking about you before we talk about your candidacy. Who is George DIAZ?
Okay. Well, my name is George DIAZ Jr. I was actually born in Manhattan, but I've raised in the Bronx. I've lived, virtually my entire life here. I'm both a Bronx Community College and a City College of New York alum. I actually St. Raymond's High School for Boys was my high school. I actually went to St. Brendan's, which is actually pretty much a block and around the corner from where I live. Among the things that I've done is, so in high school I used to do volunteer work for God's Love We Deliver, delivering food to people that are homebound due to HIV and AIDS. In college, I worked in a hotel to pay for college, have experiences. When one day we was working in the job, we did what we would do is set up events in the hotel and dinners and such. One day they had us come in at noon. It was an extremely hectic day. It was already around 8:00. So we pretty much have already worked a full shift, and we're going to 10. We had not had a break. So a group of us went down to the hotel employees cafeteria to get food. So now what happens is there's a little barrier when you go around where you get the food to where you get the water and soda and such. So apparently our boss's boss, the director, was trying to find us, and apparently, he was upset. He come down to the cafeteria. He busted about 15 of my coworkers, screamed at them, cursed at them, ordered them back upstairs to where we were working to continue. Now, because of that barrier I just mentioned, I was around. I was getting my water, so he didn't see me.
Okay.
So I didn't get in trouble. So I was like, head there, and I eating very quickly, run upstairs. This to me was it. This was the moment. This was the moment I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back to school and finish college and get a degree and say, you know what, I can't allow myself to ever be in that position again. And no one should ever be in that position where you essentially got to hide from your boss screaming and cursing at you. So eventually when I graduated from college, I went out, I actually sought out different elected officials. I went to school for media communication arts. That's what my BA is in. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to find out more about how political offices work. So I sought out different elected officials. I ended up getting interviewed and eventually hired by the former city councilman Oliver Goppel, and worked for him for almost 6 years. His last year of the second term and his final term in office, as well as his campaign for state senate. So what I saw from there is realize how many people live in the district that are going through so many difficulties: housing issues, food, disability issues with transportation, inaccessible train stations and such, and how they have to go through so many hoops. People risking losing their homes, or Con Ed shutting off their power, and them having to choose between paying rent, paying their utilities, and food. So many people are going through this, and I realized, we have to do much better than what we're doing. And it was great working for a city council member, helping people with all these different issues, keeping their homes, the accessibility issues. A lot of people who needed Access-a-Ride, or Access-a-Ride threatened to cut or reduce their services and such, and being able to help you, helping people get the home aids that they need, like the ones that helped my grandmother for her last 15 years. I decided that after all that time was done, I took a break working in the field. I'm working for a law firm, working for a few different law firms now for the last few years. My current one for 4 years. I decided to jump into the race because I said, look, we can do better than what we have now. And we need someone who is going to look out for the entirety of the district, who will take those concerns to the entirety of the district. Someone who's willing to do more, and not just doing the constituent service stuff, which obviously we need done, but who actually is going to be bold and say, you know what, these things just aren't working. And the politics of old that we've had here in the Bronx, and really you could say New York State, certainly downstate, is just not working for the majority of the people in this district. We can do better. So I went out and said, well, among the other things we have to do, the housing reform, making neglectful, abusive landlords criminally liable. Ones I've shown a history of this. I'm guessing maybe you're going to cut off soon. We have to change how we fund their education, how we fund with the MTA, and the fact that we have all these inaccessible stations.
Hey, George.
And okay, I'm gonna from there.
George, let me apologize. I can only presume that you and I were talking about the weather 2 minutes before all of a sudden I just lost my internet connection. Don't ask me how, don't ask me why. This is where God takes over. And all I can say is it was 2 minutes after you and I were talking about the weather. So I do apologize.
That's fine.
Okay, so I since I just got back in, if it's okay with you, I'm going to take 1 or 2 steps back. I know we were talking about you, and you were telling me about why you decided to go back to college.
Yes. So with the that experience, you're like, this is, no one should go through that experience. No one should feel like they need to hide from their boss and dealing with abusive bosses. They're going to be screaming at them, cursing them out, being disrespectful to them. And then obviously everything from concerns about sexual harassment and all those things as well. So I believe, we need to have more protection for workers and blue collar and white collar professions. That was a blue collar profession. I've been working mostly white collar professions since college.
But that incident, if I heard you correctly, made you want to go for higher aspirations for college, which I think are wonderful. What was the inspiration, or what was the condition that brought that you wanted to run for office?
A few different things. I looked and saw what we have now, and not just the assembly position, I'm running for, but various other offices as well, and seeing, well, are elected officials really representing us, or are they representing parts of the district, but not necessarily all of the district? What are the motivations? Also, the fact that sometimes we have too many local officials that kind of go along to get along. So things aren't going to change if we have the same people in there over and over again, because they've had opportunities, they've had decade plus, sometimes 2 decades plus, to make a lot of these changes. And despite a lot of good things that have actually happened, let's say in the last 15 years or decade and such, there's a lot more that's not being addressed. I mean, I know that this is about for example, this show would talk about the budget and stuff. There's certain things in the budget that I think are great, but maybe we should have had more funding for. And there's a few things that we left out.
Before we go into those specifics, could you describe for our audience, when I say the 81st Assembly District, that represents several neighborhoods. Could you tell us those neighborhoods? Okay,
the neighborhoods are Wakefield, Norwood, where I live, a section of Bedford Park, particularly the sliver that has Lehman College and Harris Field, Kingsbridge Heights, Riverdale, East called Spuyten Duyvil, as well, North Riverdale, Fieldston.
And how long have you lived in that, in that district?
I've actually lived in this assembly district since '93. I originally when I first came into the district living in Wakefield but I've lived in Norwood for the majority of these years since.
So what does the district need, in your opinion? You've been there now close to 30 years. What does the district need? What is it missing?
A community center in Wakefield. Having every single station wheelchair accessible with elevators. The streets overall getting cleaner. That's not the case for every neighborhood. We actually need more patrols to deal with things like the car break-ins in Woodlawn, the general crime issues in my neighborhood. Particularly, we have gang issues here. In Kingsbridge, they need more. There's a need for more police presence, which is also kind of ironic because where the precinct is located, there are a number of issues that are right around the precinct. It's the 50th precinct itself. We need better transportation options. We actually need to have more buses coming more frequently with routes that are more advantageous. We have a lot of people, particularly in Wakefield portion of the district and points further east, that are going on long, very packed buses in order to come to this area to catch trains to go to sometimes to go to Manhattan. And the lack of crosstown trains, which I know is a very serious problem that we're not addressing. We also need to have better healthcare, the New York Health Act, so that everyone has access, everyone is safer. I think you got off there.
No, I'm right here. So, if I had to ask you,
I would also say free. Just one last thing: free college for everyone of college age that's here, and free programs to help high school students or maybe students that perhaps have dropped out for one reason or another, in order to get access so they can get into our CUNY schools and also SUNY schools.
So you mentioned 4 areas so far. You've mentioned things like community center. You've mentioned things like, crime, police, and safety. You've mentioned different modes of transportation, and you've also mentioned areas in regards to education. Now, from a state budget point of view, how can you help those areas?
Okay. Various elected officials, we get discretionary funding. That's one of the things that's also in the budget, that giving more discretionary funding for the elected officials for different things. They do things like funding for community centers, for parks. All right, for projects, for if you give, let's say, money for a nonprofit that will do something in the community and such. When I talk about transportation, for example, the state is really the authority over the MTA, not the city. The state doesn't give enough money to the MTA, but at the same time, we have some questions about how the MTA is spending their money. We have to open up their books. What, the mass shooting that we had in Brooklyn a few weeks ago was another example. You had cameras in 3 consecutive stations that were not working, and they probably would have caught the shooter sooner had they had the video available. I mean, it's great that we're beautifying Times Square and such, but our priorities need to be more on everything from security to making to better accessibility, to the stations overall being in better condition, and the tracks as well. Hence the delays. So I would look to be in the corporations committee in the assembly, because that's the one that actually has the oversight over the MTA.
So talking about the state authorities for just a moment, what are your thoughts on mayoral control when it comes to education?
I'm not really a big fan of it. I understand that Eric Adams, the current mayor, is fighting for it. Unfortunately for him, he's kind of being punished because of the last 2 mayors and some of the issues that they've had with mayoral control. I'm not a big fan of mayoral control, particularly how when the co-locations of schools. You take a large school, like you take the DeWitt Clinton High School, and you turn it into a campus that has multiple schools within it. In fact, that the mayor with his budget and stuff, they haven't realized that they have work to do in the pool in the school. You're supposed to be students supposed to swim and have a swim team, but they can't operate in their own school.
Yeah.
And and particularly my issue with co-locations with charter schools, because charter schools already as is tend to get more money proportionally than standard public schools in the city. And because of that, then they're getting additional resources, and they're in a position to sometimes get priority over things like the priority of the lunch times, the priority over the gym times, priorities of club times and such. So my concern is that the current mayor will kind of continue that process, which makes me wonder, should we really allow that to continue?
So I'm just curious now, you mentioned from an educational standpoint where the state should, I guess, indirectly take that control back. Do you feel the same way in regards to what people are now calling bail reform, that maybe the state should keep that priority, or maybe transfer that priority to the city, where Eric Adams seems to be suggesting it to be?
It has to be on the state level, because the whole idea of prisons is it goes down to either state prisons or federal prisons. So it has to be on the state level. If someone is going before the criminal court, it's whatever's county's Supreme Criminal Court. So these are state matters. It needs to continue to be on the state.
So I'm curious, you've lived in the area for 30 years, and I believe the current assemblyman there has been the assemblyman there for close to 30 years. So what do you think he's doing wrong?
I don't believe that he is addressing the whole community. I believe that he has a clear preference in certain portions of the district. I don't believe that he is progressive enough on certain issues, and I believe that it's kind of this is more the go along to get along. You could make you make statements, but not in public, not where it's going to be recorded, because you're not going to stand up to the assembly speaker or the state or the Senate majority leader or the governor, especially if they're in your own party. And so I think I have an issue with that. The fact that, for example, he excused when former Governor Cuomo got in trouble, the state assembly had an opportunity to impeach him. Similar to what happened in Washington when congressional members had a chance to impeach now former President Trump, and they balked on it. The congressional members had the courage to actually to impeach him, even though obviously it did not work. But the state assembly had the ability to do it. And even if he already announced he was leaving office, they still had the opportunity. You have a situation now, however you may feel about former Governor Andrew Cuomo, he's in a position where he could run again. And he could still turn around and run as a third-party candidate for the governorship, or run for something else, maybe a state senate seat in Queens or such. And if they really thought he was bad, they could have moved forward with the impeachment and let the state senate make the decision from there.
You know, George, I'm going to ask you a question, an indirect question in regards to that. Let me just, I guess, quickly thank our audience for being here. We're going to be closing up shortly, but I do have two final questions I do want to ask you. The first one being, if or when you win your a state electoral position, what would be your feeling about state taxes? Do you think state taxes should be increased for some of the things that you've mentioned the district needs, or do you think the taxes should be frozen or maybe even decreased?
It's a combination, because ultimately some of it would have to go up, but there are different ways of how you budget things. There's certain things. Some of it is you're asking for federal money, so some of that federal money will help offset. In fact, part of the reason why this current budget is as high as it is because of an infusion of federal money. So when you have those, when the federal money comes in, you gotta go for it and take those things. Some of my priorities, which I didn't mention, for example, is I want to create what I'm calling a public integrity bureau. Now there is already an agency in the state that is supposed to deal with ethics and such, but sadly it's very flawed. And you can find many articles about that. And so that would actually have to create a new agency. Essentially that's part of the Attorney General's office, but the Attorney General doesn't actually have authority over it, so that the elected officials aren't the ones who are picking the people who aren't picking the, let's say, commissioner. We come up with a better name later, possibly. And the deputy commissioners are the people that would have the ability to investigate, because you don't want them to be able to use budgetary means, for example, in order to try to intimidate or shut down investigations.
Now, I believe you ran 2 years ago for this seat, right? So this isn't your first time running for this particular seat.
That is correct. I ran during the height of COVID. So it was extremely difficult. And for a few months, I was pretty much had to shut down. Because it was very difficult to talk to you. People were very nervous. Things are better now, but still nervous. For example, you're wearing a mask on this show. I don't know how many people are in the room with you, perhaps, but you're wearing a mask, and I'm not wearing a mask because I'm home. But if I was out and about, I'd be wearing a mask.
Well, in this room, 0, to answer your question. Now, the room behind me, there's 3.
Okay.
Yeah, but people ask me about the mask all the time. I say different strokes for different folks. This show is about prevention, right? Financial prevention, right? So why not apply it to the medical profession?
Makes sense.
So after 30 years of being in that district, you also have a state senator. And could you share with the audience what is happening, not just with the state Senate lines, but with the state assembly lines? I've had many questions. Anthony, is there going to be 1 election, 2 elections this summer? Could you explain that a little bit to the audience?
Okay, so there were a couple of lawsuits that were filed in Steuben County Civil Supreme Court, or further upstate. The point of this was really a Republican-led effort who were dissatisfied with the new district lines that were drawn, because as the Democrats primarily drew the lines because they control all three facets of the state government. What was kind of surprising was that they actually won even up to the Court of Appeals in Albany. So now what happens is they ordered the lines being redrawn. They have a few days. I believe it's the 16th, and then essentially implemented by the 20th of this month with the new district lines. So what seems is going to happen is that for the congressional districts and the state Senate districts, it looks like they're going to have to re-petition. So even though people said they were on the ballot, they ran for 5.5 weeks trying to get signatures to get on the ballot. They're going to essentially have to do it over again, but most likely with less time, probably about 3 weeks. We'll have to see if the numbers get reduced because of that. So as it stands, we have 2 primaries. We're going to have a primary on June 28th. That would be for the governor, lieutenant governor, state controller, state attorney general, your assembly members, and all the lower positions of district leaders, county committee, state committee members, and then a separate primary for state senate and your U.S. representative, congressional members.
George, I want to wish you the very best of luck in your upcoming race.
Oh, the last thing I would say is that there is still a push, and there is at least one active suit, which I believe a judge is hearing today and may have already rendered a decision or render it soon. The possibility that all the primaries may get lumped together to August. So we may have to all repetition again, though I'm not so sure about the governors, the governor ones. So that's a possibility.
George, I appreciate you saying that, because although I don't have the specific ruling yet, you're right. It's in court today, and a lot of people are speculating exactly what you said. So I would tell the audience, as well as you, as of today, I guess the 81st Assembly District is in Norwood, Riverdale, and China, right? So right now, I guess, you can run to be the president of China. But George, I want to thank you so much for being on our show. More importantly, I want to wish you luck in your race. And I'd also like you to come back on sometime in the spring, summertime, as the campaign is heating up and as we get more into budget policy and, and state concerns. So again, I want to thank you for being on our show, George, and I want to wish you a good weekend.
Thank you for having me, Anthony, and I look forward to coming on again.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us. As you know, every Friday, 5 p.m., we talk financial news and personal finance. Join us next Friday. Be financially focused. Have a good night.
Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing